What the United Nations is calling a code red for humanity.
And in Canada, heat warnings blanket areas of Ontario, Quebec.
We turn now to the battle against flooding along Lake Ontario. This is a live shot from Bowmanville.
The climate crisis has changed our world. It impacts every aspect of our lives, from health, housing, jobs, and so much more.
There is no time to waste. Ontario needs to do its part in fighting the climate crisis and reducing global emissions. This means transitioning our whole economy to net zero climate pollution by 2045.
We can do this if we start now. Action on climate change needs to be bold and it needs to be immediate.
Our climate plan leaves no one behind. It's a fair and equitable roadmap to get us to a zero waste, net zero carbon economy with help for people, businesses, and workers. Together, we can build a green, just, and resilient economy.
Our first priority is to crush climate pollution. We all want to live in safe, healthy communities with clean air to breathe. Let's use our resources efficiently and transition to a clean economy that benefits everyone. This means quickly reducing emissions of Ontario's top polluting sectors, transportation and buildings.
Second, we will restore water and nature. Ontario's wetlands, carbon sinks, farmland, and watersheds are some of our best natural solutions, helping store carbon, clean our water, and reduce flooding. By partnering with Indigenous communities, we will conserve and protect more of Ontario's natural areas.
Finally, we will succeed together. A prosperous, green, and just economy will have a place for everyone, protecting people and the places we love. We will support green innovations that lead to new businesses, careers, and better jobs. We can succeed together in building a climate resilient Ontario for current and future generations, regardless of race, background, or economic status.
The climate crisis is one of the biggest challenges facing our current and future generations. We have to act now, and we do have the solutions to fight it. All that's left is the political will.
Half measures won't cut it. The status quo means things are already more expensive and will be more difficult to fix later on. Ontario is resilient. Our plan is a roadmap for an Ontario that grows and thrives.
Together, we can build a just economy that uplifts everyone and can better withstand the hammer blows of climate chaos, all without relying on dirty fossil fuels. We can take meaningful climate action, and we can do it together, so no one is left behind. But we need the right leadership that takes the climate crisis seriously so we can all work together to build the world we want.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today for this very important announcement. And it's so nice to see so many familiar masked, socially distanced faces in the crowd today. It's an honor today to share the stage for the very first time, actually, because of COVID, with my deputy leaders, Abhijeet Manay and Dianne Saxe. But before I begin today, I'd like to acknowledge that we are addressing you from the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Treaty 13 lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I want to reaffirm the Green Party's commitment to the truth and reconciliation process, which is so vital to dismantling colonialism and systemic racism. I want to express my gratitude to Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land, the water, the animals, the plants, and the people who live here. As we face enormous challenges from the climate crisis, we must embody 7 generations thinking, not only to protect and care for people today, but for generations and centuries to come. There is no doubt we are in a climate emergency. It threatens our health, our economy, our food security, our infrastructure, and so much more. Heat waves are getting deadlier, droughts are getting longer, wildfires are getting more severe, and floods are becoming more frequent and severe. The climate emergency is the biggest challenge of our generation, the most pressing issue facing Ontario and the world. It's the biggest challenge of our lives, but it's also the biggest opportunity. We are at a tipping point, and we need honest, ambitious, and a practical plan that matches the urgency of the moment, of the crisis we face, and takes advantage of the huge opportunities in the green economy. We need a real plan for real action. And that's why today, alongside my deputy leaders, Dianne Saxe and Abhijeet Manay, I am so excited to launch the Green Party's Roadmap to Net Zero, the Ontario Greens Climate Plan. It's a real plan to crush climate pollution, restore nature, and succeed together. Let me be clear. Climate action cannot wait. And that's why this week I tabled my private member's bill, the Carbon Budget Accountability Act, which sets out a roadmap for Ontario to reduce climate pollution in half by 2030 and have the province be net zero from 2045 on. Not only are we offering a real plan, but we are showing the way to take real action. Action that can no longer be delayed. Every day we pump more fossil fuels into the air, it worsens climate pollution and poisons the air we breathe. Every day we continue to supercharge sprawl with reckless projects like Highway 413. It threatens more prime farmland, wetlands, and green spaces that protect us from the consequences of the climate crisis. Every day that Ontario fails to invest in the growing green economy is a day that we are missing out on opportunities to create new businesses and new careers and better jobs that improve people's lives. It's time for Ontario to join the $1 trillion green economy. Around the world, individuals, businesses, and companies in countries are finding opportunities in the growing green economy. Yet Ontario, under the Ford government, falls behind. It's time to start thinking and acting on our future. The Ford government is actively worsening the climate crisis, supercharging urban sprawl, pouring money into ramping up gas plants, ripping EV charging stations out of the ground, and scrapping renewable energy contracts. And the half measures of the other opposition parties, the NDP and the Liberals, just won't cut it. You know, earlier this year, I was the only MPP at Queen's Park to have the courage to stand up and vote no against Doug Ford's motion to support pipelines like Line 5. The NDP voted for it. The Liberals didn't even bother to show up to vote. These kinds of half measures are not the leadership Ontario needs to address the crisis of our lifetime. They will not address the climate emergency that we face. And so Greens are ready to provide the leadership Ontario needs to bring people together to solve the climate crisis and build the world that we all want. So let's get to work together. I'd now like to pass things over to my deputy leader, Dianne Saxe, and who's also, by the way, as many of you know, the former Environment Commissioner of Ontario. Dianne.
Sorry, everybody. I don't get any taller. Somebody help. This is as tall as I get. Okay. Good? Good morning, everyone. As the last Environmental Commissioner of Ontario, and as an environmental and energy lawyer for these last 45 years, I am both proud and heartbroken to have spent so many years warning of the environmental and climate crises that could come. And now those warnings have come true. As Mike has said, we have dragged our feet so long. The serious climate damage is here. Our home planet is in code red. There is no time to waste. But instead of taking urgent action, the party in power in Ontario today is taking us in the wrong direction. Did you know that our climate pollution, last time it's reported in Ontario, was even worse than it was in 2017, when the rest of the world was working to reduce their pollution? But there is a better choice. Ontario Greens have a clear and detailed and practical plan to both save what is precious and to build a strong 21st economy. I was privileged to lead the preparation of this plan, and I'm honored to present it to you this morning. Any effective climate and environmental plan has to do three main things. We have to crush climate pollution, we have to restore water and nature, and we have to find a way for all of us to succeed together. Our roadmap sets the standard, the benchmark for all three, and it will get even better with public feedback. The roadmap begins with Mike's new private member bill, Bill 32. It's a zero carbon law to cap Ontario's total climate pollution from 2022 to the end of the century within a fair share carbon budget. Nothing short of science-based carbon budgets will stave off climate chaos. Climate damage is driven by the total amount of climate pollution, not by what year anybody reaches net zero. We don't live in a vacuum, and Ontario cannot stop the coming climate catastrophe by ourselves. But doing our fair share can restore our reputation, improve our health, and build a clean economy. As soon as we are honest about our fair share climate budget, it makes clear how quickly we have to replace imported fossil fuels with clean Ontario electricity and with using only what we need. The good news is we still can. It's not yet too late. And doing just that will keep our money at home, give us cleaner air to breathe, and build 21st century careers and businesses, hundreds of thousands of jobs. Plus, make it safe for kids to bike to school. At the same time, we have to restore the land, water, the wild creatures of this province. Ontario is home to precious freshwater lakes, to wetlands that protect us from flooding, and to some of the most beautiful forests in the world. We are committed to working with Indigenous peoples to protect 30% of Ontario by 2030. It cannot be done without them. This roadmap shows a clear, achievable path forward for both people and planet. Around the world, individuals, companies, countries are turning away from fossil decline and competing to win in the new economy. And Ontario could be one of the winners. We have innovative people. We have one of the most highly educated populations in the world. We've got smart and flexible businesses. We've got natural wealth. We've got privileged geography. With our spark and drive and diversity, we can be world leaders in cleaner, greener technologies such as electric vehicle batteries and energy storage and networks, clean transit, biomaterials. We can create jobs for now and for the future that work with nature, not against it. Everybody that I know wants to keep their families safe, and especially the young people that we love. I've got 5 grandchildren. But what is safe has changed. There's no safety anymore in delay, in the past. The fossil fuel economy was never safe for everyone, and now it's dangerous for everyone and becoming obsolete, like buggy whips. The only safety available to us now is to build a better tomorrow together, and this roadmap shows how. So I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Abhijeet Manay, who will tell you more about how our plan builds a bridge to get us to net zero, leaving no one behind. Abhijeet. Yeah, please, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dianne. We do have a roadmap for an inclusive green transition that leaves no one behind. For too long, climate policies in Ontario have ignored the reality that climate change has unequal impacts on racialized communities, the reality of environmental as well as climate racism. We know that the impacts of climate change have a disproportionate impact on those in more marginalized communities. This summer, 6 Indigenous communities were displaced by wildfires that are becoming more intense and more frequent because of climate change. And across Ontario, environmental hazards like soil contamination, waste sites, industrial land use, polluted water and air disproportionately hurt areas that are home to racialized communities, recent immigrants, and people living in low-income areas. Climate action must be rooted in climate justice. Justice for those that have been historically ignored and devalued through both colonization as well as systemic racism. So as we build forward and seize the potential of the green economy, we must ensure those who are impacted by climate change the most are not left behind. That's why we're going to be working with Indigenous peoples to protect 25% of Ontario's lands and waters by 2025 and up it to 30% by 2030. And that's why Ontario Greens will be providing $1 billion in new funding for climate leadership for Indigenous-led conservation efforts. That's why 25% of the overall benefits that exist in the Ontario Greens climate plan will be focused on disadvantaged communities. And why we're going to keep the transition affordable by providing targeted support for lower income individuals and families, by bringing down the costs of key green equipment, making transit affordable, and providing low-cost financing as well as rental options so that electric vehicles are accessible to everyone. That's why our plan matters, because inclusion and equity matter. We have a fair and equitable plan to get us to a zero waste, net zero carbon economy without lining the pockets of the 1% at the expense of Ontario's most vulnerable. And we have to invigorate, to include, and to listen to the youth of this province as we go towards a greener Ontario, because they are the future and they deserve to have a voice. Ontario's youth have been vocal and clear in their message. They want a livable future. They want a better future where they have the opportunity to thrive with clean air and good jobs. So that's why our plan will give 60,000 young people in the next 4 years the skills and the experience to work in the green economy through a year of free college tuition plus a year of guaranteed work when they graduate. Because climate action is job action. Together, we can build a greener, a healthier, a more prosperous Ontario that works for everyone. And that's why I'm so proud to work alongside Mike and Dianne to help fight for that future. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to call Mike back to the podium to close and take questions.
Thanks, Abhijeet. Thanks, Dianne. Thanks all of you for being here today. There is no doubt that our real plan for real action will deliver the benefits that Ontarians need to improve their lives by crushing climate pollution, by restoring water and nature, and by ensuring that we succeed together. And so now I'm open to taking your questions.
Do you think that there needs to be a new tax put onto what fund these projects?
Yeah, we clearly outlined revenue tools, both redirecting existing expenditures that are misguided. So for example, instead of spending over $6 billion a year subsidizing electricity prices, which actually undermines climate action and benefits the most wealthy, we would redirect that to help people retrofit homes and buildings so they're more sustainable and save people money and energy today, tomorrow, and well into the future. We're asking the top 10% earners to pay an extra 1% on their income taxes to help ensure that the most disadvantaged in our society are not left behind by the transition. We're utilizing things like parking levies. You know, why should big box stores and malls get a free ride for taking up parking spaces when we can use that revenue to help municipalities and governments have a dedicated stream of funding for climate adaptation? So our plan is a balanced plan. It's a fully costed plan, and it shows Ontarians in an honest way of how we can pay for climate action and ensure we make the investments needed for a prosperous green economy.
Would there be funding assistance available to, say, homeowners to maybe put a green roof on the solar panels, that type of thing?
Absolutely. We have a $16 billion fund that provides funding for building retrofits for homeowners, tenants, businesses, as well as providing funding for social housing and co-op housing as well to retrofit their buildings to make them more energy efficient, which will help people save money and save energy. Will create hundreds of thousands of jobs and ultimately reduce people's utility bills.